now packed with orders. So I think we have successfully changed the narrative, successfully changed the policy framework and the financial landscape. We can say that we have in 1 year genuinely made progress.
Sanjeev, let me try and complicate this. As we become more sea-oriented in our thinking, maritime-oriented in our thinking, there are other countries also now discovering the merit of building their own national capabilities. For example, the US, and they are talking to Finland and South Korea and others to build capabilities for the Arctic and for their own. How is this competition going to play out amongst like-minded countries, as it were?
First of all, the fact that like-minded countries like the US, Australia and others are finally coming back to the view that, look, we do need to have our own fleets and invest into the maritime space and not entirely leave it to, basically to China to build all our ships. I think it's a good thing. But let me say that in some ways this plays to our strengths. Let's take just shipbuilding, for example. What is shipbuilding? Shipbuilding is essentially tens of thousands of hours of welding. Okay? There are very few people, very few countries which have the young men needed to do this heavy lifting of shipbuilding. India is one of the few countries which has the labor. We have the shipbuilding skills. We have, we build nuclear submarines, we build aircraft carriers, we can definitely build oil tankers. We have the coastline, we have our own demand for it. Very importantly, we have the steel. We are the second largest producer of steel in the world. China is the biggest. So we have all the ingredients. So we can actually build a lot of the ships for the others. I mean, America can try and rebuild its shipbuilding sector, but frankly, except for some very high-end ships, the bulk of it they will just not be able to do. I mean, where are the young men who are going to do all this welding? In fact, it could have been immigrants, but they don't want them. They don't have the steel. They actually literally don't have enough steel manufacturing capability. And so, I mean, if America wants to have a shipping ownership and shipbuilding sector, makes sense for them to actually allow us to build the hull and hand it to them. They can put whatever else into it, but the building of the hull itself,
so actually
let
there
India
are partnership possibilities that
absolutely.
Excellent. Sanjeev, because it's a young man's job, I see there are some photographs of a young man on a boat here. So can you further, you've been busy with this project also over the last 1 year.
Yes.
So maybe you can tell us what these photographs are, and maybe I'm going to then come to you on what is the economic significance of a project like this. So let's go.
So this project relates to a wooden ship that I have been trying to build for many years. So what this is the following. So as many of you already must have heard over the last few days, we have one of the oldest maritime cultures in the world, going back to the Bronze Age. So in the Harappan times, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, Indian mariners used to sail to the Middle East and so on. So that's now well documented, but the question that I raised in one of my books, Ocean of Churn, about a decade ago, is what were the kinds of ships that the Indians were using to sail these oceans, and sailing, of course, in Harappan times to Middle East, but then over the following millennia to Southeast Asia, to Korea, Japan, and so on. I mean, there's a huge amount of Indian influence all over the Indian Ocean world and beyond. But what were the ships they used? So I began to research the kinds of ships they used, and then I began to collect material. And so what you have here is a replica or a recreation of a ship from around about 4th century AD, for about 1600 years ago. This is based on Satvahana coins. There's a painting in Ajanta which is based on, there are some texts like Yukti Kalpataru and so on and so forth. And of course there are records of foreign travelers who came to India and left descriptions of these ships. So triangulating all of this, I have built this ship. It has nothing modern in it except some safety equipment. So it's first of all has no nails. It's completely stitched together, literally planks and coir rope. Then it has does not have a rudder, which rudders had not been invented at that time. So as you will see in the photographs, it's got a steering oar. It doesn't have lateen sails, you know, those triangular sails that can sail at an angle to the wind. It has got square sails, which means that you can only sail with the wind, and so on and so forth. So it has got all these archaic design elements, and we started building it about 18 months ago, based on a design that I put together along with a naval architect, and Ministry of Culture kindly provided us with support. Of course, the Honorable Prime Minister was very supportive of this project. So here is the ship. This is what it looks like. It's right now in Karwar, in the naval base, because it's actually a Navy ship. It's called INSV Kondinya.
INS?
INSV Kondinya.
And you will tell us a bit about that name.
Yeah, so basically, the name Kondinya is derived from the name of the earliest Indian mariner that we know of by name. So Kondinya was an Indian merchant who was sailing along the coast of Southeast Asia, in Mekong Delta in particular, what is now South Vietnam, Cambodia, that area. And he was attacked by a group of locals, and he was surrounded. He was in a bad situation, and maybe there were pirates or whatever. Luckily for him, the local tribe was led by a beautiful princess called Soma, who saw him and fell in love and proposed marriage. Now, I'm assuming he didn't have too much choice in the matter, but anyway, he did marry her, and they set up the first Hindu kingdom of Southeast Asia called Funan about roughly 2,000 years ago. So Kondinya is very central to the legends of Southeast Asian countries. Many of the royal lineages of Southeast Asia draw their lineage back to this marriage. And so we have named the ship after Kondinya.
So that's in a way reliving India's maritime history in some sense, or the folk tales and the fables around our journeys.
Absolutely. So the idea here is that, as you can see from the photographs, it's in the water now. I literally have come from Karwar to Mumbai.
You were training right now, right?
I was training for about 9 days on board, because basically we need to figure out how to sail it. Remember, there's no living person who knows how to sail these ships, so we had to learn how it works. So for example, if you hit a big wave, the hull caves in because it's stitched together, it's not nailed, right? So it has all kinds of strange characteristics which we had to figure out. But the good news is that the ship has behaved quite well, even in heavy seas. And the idea now is to sail it to Oman in winter.
And how long will that take?
Depending on wind, 2 to 3 weeks.
It's a 2 to 3 week sail.
Yes, so we are expecting to go in December from Porbandar to Muscat.
And that is the traditional route.
That is the traditional route, exactly.
Now, what about the southeast?
So the idea is, once we have tested this route out, which is somewhat easier, the Arabian Sea is a little bit easier to navigate than the Bay of Bengal. Bay of Bengal has much more cyclones, and it's a much rougher body of water. So assuming that all goes well and we reach safely to Muscat, etc., we'll bring the ship back, we'll sail it back to Karwar, and next year we will take it to Odisha, or ancient Kalinga, and we will attempt to recreate a very famous ancient route called Bali Jatra, which is to sail it from Kalinga all the way to the island of Bali in Indonesia. Now that is a 3-month voyage, so it is not an easy voyage to do. But of course, with the Oman expedition, hopefully we'll have gained enough experience to be able to attempt a more ambitious one next year.
And how much of these journeys are you going to be personally doing?
Well, the first journey I intend to do myself. I think my boss will give 2 weeks off or 3 weeks off. But I think 3 months may be a bit of a stretch. But as I said, since a random economist has designed the ship, I have to be on the ship to have some skin in the game. Expecting 15 sailors to sail a ship by a complete novice ship designer may be unfair. So the best way to to,
To
to
actually,
have
this is
skin in the game is to be on it.
so this is actually a personal commitment to the integrity of the project.
Absolutely, yes.
But
Remember, because otherwise nobody knows how to sail these ships. So, you know, what is the sanctity of this design?
so you are giving a new meaning to the word. We are all in it together.
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, Sanjeev, tell me something. This is, of course, your personal passion, but also your whole, fascination with India's history and India's journey. Now, what does this really mean in economic terms in the 21st century? Are you convinced that projects like these and others are required to actually instill a greater fascination with the waters amongst the youth? And
Absolutely. So we, you know, maybe because we have our capital is in Delhi, we have this uniquely landlocked view of the world. So surprisingly, you know, those of you who have suffered through the Indian school system will know that there is almost no mention of our maritime history, the influence we have had on the rest of the world, particularly on Southeast Asia or China, or, you know, not many people know that Korean history begins with the marriage of a local prince to a princess from Ayodhya. So Indians don't know this sort of thing. You know, the largest Hindu temple in the world is not in India, it's in Cambodia, built by one of the descendants of Kondinya and Soma. So point is that we don't celebrate all of this. We barely know anything about it. So, so one of the things we are trying to do through this project, and by the way, there's another parallel project with which I am associated, which is to build a maritime museum in Lothal in Gujarat. In fact, this ship, after all these voyages, will be displayed in that museum. So the idea is to change this. I'm also involved in rewriting many of the textbooks. So specifically the social science history textbooks. I am putting all of this maritime history into it so that people appreciate the culture of risk-taking. So there are 3 things. One is a more diffuse cultural thing that I want to bring out. The idea of Indians as a risk-taking people.
entrepreneurs.
Entrepreneurs. Otherwise, you see, the tone of our textbooks, the tone of the culture is, you know, we are somehow a very passive people. Other people came here, ruled over us, and we should somehow be very grateful for this experience of colonization. You know, we need to get away from this. We ourselves went to the rest of the world. We explored it. The Indian civilization we are proud of is a, you know, outward-oriented, risk-taking culture that celebrates a lot of, I mean, sailing these ships. I have all the, you know, I have all the proper maps and everything, but sailing those oceans in those ships with no maps into the unknown would have been required some real guts.
Some steely spirit.
Yeah, so that is a thing that we need to revive. And we're trying to do it more widely through encouraging startups, etc. But I think there has to be an appreciation that it's, you know, there is a certain zest that is needed for having that culture of risk-taking.
No, there was one common refrain when I was, going through my teen years and early college days, that we preferred coding and software and services over manufacturing and industry. My question to you is that today we are at the cusp of 2 big transitions. One, of course, is India's outward expansion, and we will be adding close to $6 trillion to our GDP in the next 10 years, of which 50% is going to be based on external trade, and at least 80% is going to be on the waters, right? The second big transition is technology. Many of these young people in this room would not want to be the ship builders that you are, in many ways are pointing to as a crying need and an opportunity, and would rather be.
So I have no problem.
So how do we excite the young people into this sector?
So I think you have misunderstood what I'm trying to say. Look, shipbuilding is a sector which is important in its own right, but I think there's a wider idea of and culture of going out there, taking risks in all kinds of fields, whether it's in artificial intelligence or in the field of defense, or could be anything, or even tourism. It requires a certain spirit of risk-taking
of betting on something different.
Yes, and that is really what I'm
the
trying.
Big bets.
The big bets. Where are the big bets? So, you know, that is basically the culture change that we are trying to bring. So the ship project that we talked about just now is not about ships in the end. It is ultimately about creating...
Unleashing that spirit.
Unleashing a spirit of risk-taking. And that is basically what and I'm trying to tie it in with an understanding of ourselves and of our history of explorers, adventurers, risk-takers. So you could be risk-taking in the field of artificial intelligence for all I care. I think, you know, the explorers exploring the Indian Ocean 3,000 years ago would have been perfectly understood exploring the universe of artificial intelligence.
Correct. No, so Sanjeev, we have a lot of young people in this room from, you know, Western India, but also from Punjab and from South India. How do projects like these especially, and you know, you're working with the Indian Navy, as you move from Porbandar to Oman or on your way back, how do we get all of them involved in this project? You know, it's easier to digitally reach out to them, but this is a physical project.
No, of course we will digitally reach out to them. I'm trying to create a Twitter account for it and put all the photos and things.
So Condania will have its own identity.
Yeah, Condania should have its own identity. I mean, I built it, but then I will move back on to doing more boring things like writing the budget. And the idea is that the ship and it will have a different life of its own. And hopefully it will not be the only one of its kind. There are other fields in which we can also do exploratory things. I'll give you one example of something I'm already thinking about. You know, the oldest chariot ever found in the world was dug up in Sanoli about 6 years ago, near Bagpat, just east of Delhi. It's a Bronze Age, 4,000-year-old chariot. Okay? So, just as another example of a land-based version of the same thing, I want to build a chariot, put 2 horses on it, ride it, and see if I can shoot arrows off it like Mahabharata.
So look, I will, shooting arrows is not necessarily something I want to promote here, but...
Why not? This is the problem.
No, but I think the spirit is understood that actually it's not really necessarily about the weapon systems or the
it's not.
Mobility.
So,
it's
exactly.
about the human spirit.
So in fact, if you now go back to the very first question you asked, if we had not had the spirit about 18 months ago to say, you know what, India can create a serious conversation in the maritime and shipping space, right? We would never have been here in the first place.
Correct.
All those rule changes that 70,000 crore budget, all those infrastructure status, all those orders that we have is a direct result of conversations we had 18 months ago.
Correct. Pushing the boundaries.
We would not have gone on to this voyage at all if we didn't have the spirit. So we are here because of the same spirit.
You know, I'm feeling very proud right now. I'm feeling like that guy on the chariot shooting arrows. Okay, so but you know, Sanjeev, 2 or 3 more specific technical questions. How do we, in some sense, now take this momentum of shipbuilding, of port-led growth, of maritime frontiers? What are some of the big ideas that we now should be expecting from the policymakers and from the business community in the days ahead? What could be some 2-3 big game changers for India's journey in the future?
So as you may be aware, we're building this massive new port just north of here in Vadavan. And that port, we hope to make it bigger than all the current ports combined together. So it's a very major project. We intend to have one of those on the east side as well. So one is just build the infrastructure in scale. You know, we used to have very inefficient ports, as you will remember. We have made that somewhat more efficient today. So there's been a significant improvement in efficiency over the last 5-6 years. But we now really need to have those really big ports. So
really large ports.
Really large ports, just the physical infrastructure. And of course, make the bureaucratic throughput of the processes better. I mean, there are lots of complaints about how the customs system, etc., work. They are not fit for, you know, 21st century India. So we need to fix those glitches in the system. So one is the infrastructure, but also the soft infrastructure. So that's one important thing we need to do. Second thing we need to do is to reorient, whether you can call it foreign policy, economic policy, whatever, to begin to think of what our neighborhood is. So if you begin to think of our neighborhood purely in land terms, then we just have friendly neighbors like the one to our west. But if we, on the other hand, have a maritime view, then our neighbors are totally different. Then our neighbors are Singapore,
UAE.
Indonesia, Australia, Oman, UAE, Kenya. These are our neighbors. That is a very different worldview of who our neighborhood is. And I think we need to begin to think of that as our neighborhood.
So that's one way of reimagining a neighborhood. And what about our very large young population that is now going through an aspirational stage of transformation? How do we bring them into all of these?
So, as I keep telling people, we have just about entered our demographic peak period. However, be very, very clear that this is not going to last forever. This is a 25, maximum 30-year window in which we basically need to max out India's development, growth, etc. At the end of this, circa 2050 or somewhere thereabouts, we too will begin to age. So this is the next 25 years, we need to generate the kind of growth that China generated in the previous 25 years. Now that requires all cylinders firing. We need to fix our own, reform our government, reform our judiciary, reform all these things, by the way, of many of which I speak about. I personally attempt to fix some of those things through process reforms, structural reforms, and so on. But we need to, it has to be all decks, all hands on the deck all hands on the deck kind of approach, because frankly, this is the push that will take us through. And we don't have the luxury of time. So I think this is the important thing that we need to, that requires that, people love this when they say China did through state-led capitalism. They love the state-led part of it. What about the capitalism part of it? So we need to get everybody out there pushing, taking risk, and that some of it is physical risk, some of it is business risk, a lot of it is intellectual risk. I mean, what about India's patenting system? And I have worked for the last 3-4 years fixing India's patent system. It's now reasonably efficient. But you know what problem we now have? We don't get enough applications. So in the next 12 months or so, India's patenting system will be good enough to deal with 2.5 lakh, that's 250,000 applications a year. Do you know how many we get? We get 100,000 applications a year. Now, even allowing for, very optimistically, about 40% of it will actually be given patents. So if we're getting only 100,000 patents a year, we can only, at the best, give 40,000 patent actual grants. Okay, now put it in context. China gives about 900,000 patents a year. Even if you leave out utility patents, low quality patents, it gives out about 300,000 patents a year. So China gives out 300,000 patents a year. Our best case scenario, given the applications giving, is 40,000. And that's not because the government is the bottleneck anymore. It used to be, but we have fixed it. So we now need that risk-taking, that patenting culture, and a lot of it has to come from private labs, by the way. Government labs in India, we can be improved. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be improved. But worldwide, most of the patenting is done by universities and, very importantly, the private sector. But Indian private sector hardly invests into R&D because there is no culture of doing R&D. Whenever I go to an event by CII, FICCI, and all these kinds of, and I raise this issue, the so-called titans of industry try to change the topic to some CSR activity, some weavers in Jharkhand or something like that.
So big R&D is not something that's prevalent.
No. So this is part of the culture change that I am trying to push for.
I want to come to you all now. We have, I think, 9 minutes left. If there are a few questions that some of you want to pose to Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, there are mics on the side of the room. You can walk up to the mics and pose your question to him. In the meantime, I want to ask you one more thing, Sanjeev. As folks move in, or at least they rouse themselves enough to move to the mics. Let me ask you, the other big question with trade and tariffs, and with the global project on economic integration now being recast or in some sense being reset. Uh, how does it, or what does it mean for us as an emerging economy that is seeking to grow with a degree of predictability and speed? How do we need to readjust in this new world that we face?
See, very important to remember that the world is always uncertain. This may be particularly uncertain, but look, the world will always be unstable and uncertain. We'll occasionally get lucky with a period of stability, but by and large, you should assume that the world will, for large parts of the time, be unstable. Now, it happens to be that we are going through a phase where we could have accelerated our growth past where we are now. I think we'll grow somewhere 6.5% to 7% this year. Looks good compared to the rest of the world, but my own sense is that we could easily be growing in the 7.5% to 8% range. We can't, because the rest of the world will currently not give us the space to do so. Now, you may argue, what do you do with Trump tariffs? And my view on this is that, look, we will not escalate the situation, but we will stand our ground. The reason is that at some point in our history, we have to, if we have ambitions of being a third global power, then we should be willing to stand up for Indian interests. And this is as good a time as it will get to do it. Okay, we won't grow at 7.5, we'll grow at 6.5. Not a great tragedy. There's no other macroeconomic stability pressure on us. Inflation is well behaved at 1.5%, maybe too low, some may argue. There is no external stress on the system. The banking system is in very rude health. The capital markets are in rude health. Our foreign exchange reserves are at 700 billion. If under these circumstances, we cannot take a little bit of pressure, then, we shouldn't be in the game. So my own sense is that, look, it's okay. Take the pressure.
This is actually the time to emerge.
It is the time to emerge. And by the way, every country that has emerged has had to go through
this period of turbulence.
So in fact, let me show you how it has been for other countries when they emerged. When Britain emerged became a great power, it had to stand up to French power, particularly defeat Napoleon repeatedly. When the Germans became a great power, they had to win all the Franco-Prussian wars. When the Russians emerged, they had to hold their own against both Britain and France in the Crimean War. The Japanese emerged, they had to defeat the Russians in the 1905. The Americans had to win two world wars. The Chinese had to stand up to the Americans in Korea and Vietnam. We only have to survive
the Trump tariffs. That's easier.
We are getting it cheap.
Okay, let's take some questions. And I want to actually take 3 questions. Can I also request the lady to come in front so that I can bring you in? The one who's standing at the end of the line, I want you to come in front because I want to have a mixed bunch here. But go ahead, sir. You please start.
Yeah, very good morning, sir. Just I wanted to know how much your INSP Kaundi will reflect Prime Minister's vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat and also Viksit Bharat of 2047. Also, you can share some inputs on same for maritime technology and shipping. Thank you.
So, obviously, the INSV Kaundinya is not an attempt to revive stitch ships from 2000 years ago. They are obviously impractical for modern use. I mean, if I learn something of modern application, I'll be very thrilled, but frankly, it is a recreation. The purpose is really to build a sense of pride and spirit and an understanding of our history. So in that sense, it relates to Atmanirbhar Bharat in that it's meant to feed into the spirit of getting up there and doing things. It's more about the spirit, not about the actual ship itself. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah.
Ma'am.
Mr. Sayal, India's historical maritime networks once connected East Africa, Arabian Sea, Southeast Asia in self-sustaining trade systems before the age of Western hegemony. So as new corridors re-emerge across the global south, how can India combine maritime economics and civilizational diplomacy to build an alternate model of connectivity, one that would be rooted in resilience and reciprocity? Thank you.
So obviously one of the things before doing anything is to ourselves to understand what that history is. So that's one of the things I'm doing. I've written books about this, like the book Ocean of Churn, which talks about this history. So a lot of it I have been attempting to do. You'll be pleased to know that I'm also attempting right now to upgrade our social studies and history textbooks, where I'm adding all of these, including, you know, these voyages we made. But we have to be very careful that we do not then twist it into a story of some sort of a proto-colonization by Indians of the world. That's not what actually happened. The Cholas did indeed make raids on Southeast Asia, but they were basically to keep
Peace.
trade channels open.
Correct.
They were not colonizing Southeast Asia in the way, say, Britain colonized India. Also to remember that this was a lot of it is give and take. So many things that we think are Indian are actually from other countries. I'll give you one example. Indians love to chew pan. Both the leaf and the betel nut, the supadi, are actually of Southeast Asian origin. And they came here through trade. So the reason I'm telling you this is that we need to be careful in our attempts to build trade linkages and revive civilizational links. Other countries are very proud of these things. I mean, there's a whole country called Indonesia, which celebrates our culture. It's called Indonesia after India. Its currency is the rupiah. I mean, it's the correct, actually the correct pronunciation, rupiah.
And Basa is the language.
Yeah, the national symbol is Vishnu's Garuda. You know, so they celebrate that civilizational connect, but we have to be careful to include it as a joint and shared civilization, not in terms of,
not exclusive but inclusive.
Yeah, it has to be inclusive, and it's very important that we don't show it as some sort of as some sort of a hegemonic power. It was a shared experience, and we need to include everybody in it.
Go ahead. Short question now, huh?
Good morning, everyone. Myself, Rudra Angola. I am an undergraduate student and also a founder and president of emerging think tank named Indosphere. So I want to ask Mr. Sanyal that you have given India's ambitions to become a global shipbuilding hub. What key policy reforms or economic reforms do you believe that it's necessary in the current scenario?
I think
we'll take one more from the lady behind and then I'll turn it to you. Because I can only take one more question, so go ahead.
Namaskar,
and apologies
sir.
to everyone else, we can't take any more, but go ahead.
I'm Janvi Khubani from Rajasthan. I would like to know that how INS Vincontinia can contribute mainstream to the Act East policy of India as we celebrate the decadal anniversary this year.
Act East policy.
Okay.
Continue.
So the first thing is that, look, we have already made very major changes. As I said, about 5 colonial era maritime laws relating to flagging, ownership and all have already been changed. So please read up on them. So that's already done. As I said, we have already put a lot of financing in. And of course, we changed the rules about including ships as infrastructure, very important for getting that done. But very important, we have also gone out there and actively gone around seeking partnerships. The Secretary Shipping immediately before this was T.K. Ramachandran. He was very involved in, he went to Korea, Japan, etc. and he literally wooed them. So we have been out there putting in the effort, and some of it is beginning to show through. Just last week, we got from a very major French shipping line $300 million order for Cochin shipyard, just as an example.
Maybe INS Continua could do the ride next year as part of the decadal celebrations of...
So, decadal, yeah, it could be considered part of the decadal celebration. So, we will be sailing it hopefully. As I said, it all depends on how well this first voyage goes. But let's say next year in Kartik Purnima, which tends to be in November, middle of November, we will have this voyage setting sail from Odisha, heading down south, because remember, these ships cannot sail at an angle to the wind.
Correct.
So they have to sail with the wind. So the winds from Odisha will take it directly south.
Towards Colombo, and then you will turn
Yeah,
towards...
no, not towards Colombo. It will first go to Mahabalipuram,
Okay.
which was, of course, also a port, or Nagapattinam, also an ancient port. From there, it will go to Sri Lanka on the eastern side, to Trincomalee.
Trincomalee.
From Trincomalee, it then has to go further south, using the same winds, till it hits the equator, where the winds die out, but there is a current. And so the current is what takes the ship across from Sri Lanka to north of Sumatra. And which is why it takes so long. It takes almost 6 weeks to make that crossing. And once you're on the other side, there has a choice. You can go down the Malacca Straits, or you can sail on the western side of Sumatra, Java, and then Bali. So there are two ways of getting there. The Malacca route, it was historically the more important route. However, it is now, for a sailing ship of the kind that I have built, extremely dangerous because it's full of oil tankers. In fact, the biggest danger that I see in this, all this voyaging is actually not the weather, but other large ships. In case they don't see me, there's nothing I can do because I can't change course. I have to sail with the wind, and I am not visible clearly on the radar because I'm made of wood. And so
But you're carrying some transponders.
We are carrying transponders and lights, but as I said, the biggest danger to me are other large ships.
So I think that's a good note to end this conversation on, and we are wishing you and your crew safe journeys to Oman, and of course hopefully next year thereafter to Bali. Please join me in applauding Sanjeev for his interventions this morning.
Thank you.
And let me turn it back to Pulkit.
Thank you very much. If I could request Dr. Saran and Mr. Sanyal to join us at the front of the stage for a photograph, please. We will be moving into our next plenary session shortly. I request everyone to remain seated. As my colleagues refresh the stage, I'd just like to make a couple of housekeeping announcements. We are live tweeting and live streaming some of the sessions taking place at Sagarmanthan today. Please do engage with our content across all social media, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, Facebook. Please do tag us with the hashtag Sagarmanthan 2025.